Wilds of Eldraine is right around the corner, and I figured it'd be time to talk about my pick for the top 10 best cards of the set. And keep in mind, this set was designed with rotation in mind, and we did not get rotation. So when I evaluate these cards, unfortunately, I was looking at the set as a whole, and I was like, this set doesn't really make sense in the context of this standard, because some of these cards are so cool and would have been really powerful if we did rotate a few cards, like cut down and stuff like that. But without rotation, some of these cards risk not seeing any play or not creating new archetypes because the power level standard is so high already. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I really hope that this set drops and then we have zero like decks from the previous standard and everything's like shaken up. There is some potential for that because there are a lot of new like mechanics, or I shouldn't say mechanics, but there are a lot of like tribal things or like food tokens, stuff like that. New opportunities to build different archetypes. And I'm hoping that those archetypes are strong enough to take the forefront in the standard metagame. But anyways, let's just jump right into my 10th pick, or they won't really be in any particular order, just 10 of the best cards, I think. Let's get it started. Okay, first up we have Talion, the Kindly Lord. 4 mana, 3/4 in the Dimir colors, legendary creature, very noble. Of course, it has flying. This is a fairy. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value or toughness equal to the chosen number, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. Now, hear me out, Shield Red. It is what it is. Again, I'm evaluating the 10 best cards from the set from the standpoint of like the set itself. Unfortunately, I'm not sure this card will see play, but these types of effects are effects that I really, really love in Magic. I feel like anytime you give the players extra decision making, extra mind gaming, I feel like that makes the game 10 times more interesting. And this card has the power to back that kind of effect up. And we've seen a lot of these effects. I've actually played almost all of them in when they come out or when they're available in standard, and they all feel really good as long as you're a good player and you know what to pick. So for Talion, usually you're going to want to pick something like 2 to to go for the throat if you're against black. Against aggro decks, it's pretty easy as well. You'd probably want to pick 2. So 2 is going to be the best number here. And the fact that you get a pretty decent body with flying, so it's a good enough blocker where I feel comfortable with this card, being very powerful. I do feel like this is a very powerful card. And it fits into the fairy archetype, that is relevant for sure. Fairies, I would say they probably still want Shield Red, but maybe there's an argument to be said for this if you're really going tribal. But I do think fairies have one weakness. It's they don't have a Lord. Well, this card is quite literally named Lord, but what I'm saying is they don't have an Anthem effect. They don't have a +1/+1 to all fairies. So there's really less incentive of just going all in on fairies and more so going for like a few early game fairies to get activations from the special instant and sorceries that need fairies on the battlefield. And this might see play in that deck. I don't know. The fact that it's directly competing with Shield Red, I feel like is a little bit disappointing. But there's some potential here, and I do feel like this is one of the best cards in the set. All right, Charming Scoundrel. 2 mana red 1/1 human rogue with haste. When it enters the battlefield, you choose 1. Discard a card, draw a card, create a treasure token, or create a Wicked Roll token attached to target creature you control. Wicked Roll token is an enchantment token that you slap onto a creature you control. Here it says it right here. And it gives +1/+1, and when that token leaves the battlefield, your opponent loses 1 life. So very versatile. And this card is fantastic, specifically with the bargain mechanic, as you can make a treasure token. It's also good at ramping you into things early game. It's good as a top deck because you're getting either damage if you need it with the Wicked Roll token, or you're getting a looting effect, which is fantastic. So the flexibility really makes this card quite insane, and it makes it viable in a multitude of different archetypes, whereas usually haste creatures are only viable in aggressive decks. So this card is definitely, I think, one of the better cards in the set, and it definitely fits in my top 10. Sleep Cursed Fairy, a 1 mana 3/3 flying ward 2 fairy wizard. When it enters the battlefield, it comes in tapped with 3 stun counters on it. And you can pay 2 mana, 1 in a blue to untap it. Now, of course, you're looking at this, you're like, why is this card good? I mean, it comes in, it can't block, it can't attack. for the next 4 turns, I think it is. Oh no, 3 turns, and then it untaps on the next one. So yeah, that's not very good. But why is this card good? Well, multitude of reasons. One is the stat line is incredible. So when you do get to attack, it's really good. Flying is insane. And Ward 2 means it protects itself. Now that's relevant for a lot of different strategies. One strategy would be if you need to stack a creature with certain buffs, you're able to do that. Another strategy would be, just in the fairy archetype, you slap this down and then you have a guarantee that it won't get destroyed on the next turn. So you're able to use your fairy-centered instant sorcery spells that require you to have a fairy on the board, like that Thoughtseize spell. Or the -3/-3 if you have a fairy X cost spell as well. Or the counter spell, for example. The counter spell for 3. Not that that's very relevant on turn 2 because that will counter any spell anyways. But the fact that you have a guaranteed creature that is going to stick on the battlefield is huge. And the fact that it has less downside the further along you go and the more mana you have on the battlefield, because you can forcefully untap it. Well, you're going to be removing stun counters if it comes in, but the fact that you can remove those stun counters faster with the activated ability is fantastic. And on top of that, there is actually an infinite combo where you can gain an infinite amount of mana. Now, it does take, I think it's a 3-card combo. Yeah, it does. Technically 4 if you really want to get the 1-turn kill. It's going to be with the, I think there's a Kami that generates mana. You put this card in the graveyard. I mean, I'll showcase. I'm not going to explain it here. Just know that infinite 1-turn kill combo does exist in Standard with the help of another new card that I'm not going to feature here. But anyways, my deck tech or my deck video on the combo deck is coming soon. So look forward to that. But let's just move on to the next card. All right, black has a few really good cards. Actually, well, 2 I'm going to feature here. And these cards are actually next level on the power level curve. And these it's funny because it's always black. It seems like black is already so strong, but it keeps getting better. They never give it like, something underwhelming and buff everything else. It's always got to be a black spell that's just so good. Anyways, back for seconds, 3-mana sorcery with bargain, so you can sacrifice an artifact, enchantment, or a token as you cast the spell to get an additional effect. In this case, return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, and if you bargain it, you can put one of those cards with CMC 4 or less onto the battlefield. Now, think about this for a second. First of all, we still have Harvester, the Rakdos Vampire. We still have blood tokens, and blood tokens are really crazy with this card because you can curve it out quite well. Blood tokens also allow you to loot away some spells from your hand to put them in the graveyard to set this card up. But the thing that's so broken is that this card is a mana gain. So it's a mana gain and it's card draw and it's like huge tempo. It's just ridiculous. It's insane to have a reanimation spell that costs so cheap that's able to put a creature with a higher mana cost in play at almost no downside, virtually no downside. The bargain cost is so ridiculously easy to, assemble that it's just a joke. And being able to bring out Shieldred from the graveyard, now with the next spell we're going to feature, you basically have infinite Shieldreds, and you can pretty much reanimate. Well, even think about this, like you're putting Shieldred on the battlefield, for example, or let's say Trespasser or something, whatever creature you want to put on the battlefield that's 4 CMC or less, and then you can bring like the Harvester that was used previously earlier to generate the blood token, you bring it back to your hand, you can play that again, so you have card advantage, you're setting up another blood token. It's like an infinite loop of like, if your opponent doesn't exile your graveyard or exile your creatures, you're gonna have like infinite amount of value with this spell. It's just so ridiculous for 3 mana. It's just absurd. I don't know what to say about it. Like, you'll see, I have a video as well that I don't know if it's probably not going to be released before this, but I have a video on this kind of bargain Rakdos deck. So look forward to that if you want to see this card in action. Let's move on to the next card. And here we go, the Mythic Sorcery. 4 mana, black. So 1 and 3 black. Beseech the Mirror. Bargain, of course, as we've seen with the previous spell. And search your library for a card, exile it face down, and then shuffle. If the spell was bargain, you can cast the exiled spell without paying its mana cost if that spell's mana value is 4 or less. Put the exiled card into your hand if it wasn't this way. Alright, first of all, we have an insane mana base in Standard, allowing you to easily hit 3 black on turn 4, even if you're playing a second color. So, there's that. And there's also the fact that this is a tutor that also casts the spell for free as long as it's 4 or less CMC. And you know what else costs 4 mana? Shield Red. How about that? Funny how that works, huh? Seems like everything was designed with Shield Red in mind these days, where it's making it even easier for you to find Shield Red, and then with the previous spell, well, you can just bring it back from the graveyard. And if you don't need Shield Red, you can just grab whatever else. Even just as a 4 mana tutor, this card is totally fine. So at worst, you're paying 4 mana to grab whatever you want out of your deck, but usually you're going to build your deck around this, and you're going to be able to cast everything that you want for 4 less CMC. So you're going to build your deck around this, and you're going to be able to cast literally anything. You can grab a sweeper, you can grab a planeswalker, you can grab a different creature suiting this specific situation. I don't know. There's really unlimited possibilities with this card, and it might honestly be the best card in the set. It's I think it's hard to argue against it. So yeah, we'll have to see what else I put on this list, but for now, Beseech the Mirror, absolutely broken, and you'll definitely see it in action in that one video I was talking about. All right, we've got some green cards now, a lot of green cards. I think green is the overall winner of this set when it comes to average power level on spells. And Knight of Sweet's Revenge is probably the best green spell in the set, I think. Actually, it's in contention. It's either the best or the second best, but it is at least my favorite, so that's why I'm putting it up first here, showcasing it first before we get into the rest. Knight of Sweet's Revenge, 4 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you make a food token. Foods you control have tap, add green. Now, we all know that's, actually crazy. I mean, actually, maybe you don't know how crazy this is. Food enters the battlefield, and you can tap it immediately for green, which means that all food generation that you play after this card will immediately tap for green unless it's a creature. And that means you have virtually infinite mana ramp as long as you built your deck correctly, or very fast mana ramp. And on top of that, food tokens are really good at stabilizing you thanks to the life gain. So when you're slightly behind and you need a little bit of life, well, you have that guarantee with the food token that you can also sack for 3 life. This card is ridiculous as well because we have a lot of other food cards that I'm not gonna. I guess I didn't showcase them in this top 10, but there are a lot of. Trust me, there are a lot of food generating spells early game that you can play before this that make it completely insane. Almost like you play this card and you can immediately tap for 3 or 4 green, which is crazy. But the sacrifice ability on this card is absolutely insane as well. 7 mana, you sacrifice it. Creatures you control gain +X, where X is the amount of food tokens you control. So not only is it ramping you, but it also has utility in the late game when you're trying to finish off your opponents. Usually ramp spells only serve one purpose, and that's to ramp you. So when you draw them in the late game, they feel really bad, or they don't feel like they have any impact, and you probably lose the game. A card that comes to mind is Mind Splice Apparatus, the blue spell that just reduced the cost of your spells. Well, that's fine, but what do you do when you don't find your draw spells? What do you do when you have a good setup, but you're slowly losing again because you can't find the right spells in the right order? This spell just fits way better in the archetype that it is in, where it's really contributing towards you winning the game quickly. It's like an all-in-one ramp spell, which is just fantastic. It's got a finisher attached to it. It's got ramping. It makes a food token, which gains you life. It's just the perfect ramp spell, in my opinion. It's so beautiful. Royal Treatment is an absolutely crazy combat trick. Target creature you control gains hexproof for 1 green at instant speed, of course. Create a Royal Roll token attached to that creature. Royal Roll token is +1/+1 and has ward 1. So this is really crazy. We've had effects like this in the past, some that add a +1/+1 counter. This is arguably better than that. Now, it doesn't stack on the one creature. You can only have one roll at a time on that creature, so you can't really +2/+2 in ward 2, unlike the +1/+1 counter from Snakeskinville, for example, which is no longer in standard. But now we have the replacement for that, which is Royal Treatment. So what's broken about this card is that the roll token that it puts on the creature gives it ward 1. So not only are you blowing out your opponent that's trying to cast a removal spell on your creature, for example, but then they have to pay the extra ward cost to target it again. So it's doubly good in that fashion of really putting you ahead in terms of mana and putting your opponent far behind when it comes to mana utility and mana usage overall. So this card is just really crazy as combat trick. Bramble Familiar is an absurd mana dork. 2 mana, 2/2, add green. So 2 mana, 2/2 is very good. It blocks extremely well early game in case you need it. And it has an activate ability that's fantastic, and you'll see why in a second. So 2 mana, discard, you tap it, you discard a card, you return it to your hand. So early game, it's a ramp creature. If it survives until the late game, you can return it to your hand, and you can cast the adventure side. So it's also a really good top deck because you can just immediately cast the adventure side as well. 7 mana sorcery, mill 7, put a creature, enchantment, or land from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. So 7 mana, you mill top 7, you find a big creature or an enchantment or whatever you're playing, and you slap it right onto the battlefield. So that's really, really good on a mana dork. So it's something that will help you early game and something that will help you late game. A card like that has such versatility is always very powerful, and I think this is one of the best kind of adventure effects in the set. And the card itself just works so well within itself. So it's not requiring other things. It's just a good card by itself, and that's just what it is. It's fantastic. All right, the last green card that I'm going to put on this list is one that has very high potential. It's very hard to exactly figure out how impactful this card is going to be, but let's take a look first, and then we can talk about it. So 3 mana, Saga, in green, you make a 3/3 beast creature token. Chapter 2, you sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for any creature or basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle, obviously. And Chapter 3, 2 target creatures get +2/+2 and trample until end of turn. There's a lot of power here. There's a lot of things that are very, very, very good. And mostly what you have to look at is Chapter 2. So if you just look at this card by itself, it doesn't seem like it's doing that much. You get a 3/3, maybe you sacrifice the 3/3, you get a bigger creature, you play the bigger creature, and then maybe 1 or 2 creatures gets +2/+2 on your next turn. But that's just by itself, right? What you have to look at is the idea of playing a deck around this that can utilize this effect very powerfully. Notably, a 2 mana, so it's probably wouldn't be played in mono green, in my opinion. You need something that generates tokens here. That's why it's so good. For example, you play a 2-drop that generates another token, then you get your 3/3 beast token, and you sacrifice a 1/1, and then you get your 4-drop. So you got your 3 mana 3/3, you sacrificed a 1/1, then you get your 4-drop, you're curving out, and then on the next turn, assuming nothing happened that's disastrous, your 3/3 beast token and your 4-drop get +2/+2 and trample, and that is just ridiculous. So it's just very, very good because all tutor effects are just crazy, I think, in Magic. You have to value a tutor effect quite highly, and one that is relatively low cost is worth that much more. And I think one that's also defensive enough to be good as a top deck, just making that 3/3 beast token, I think this has very high potential. I think Chapter 3 can be a little bit awkward. You know, sometimes you're not going to be able to use it, but when it's going to be good, it's going to be very good. It's mostly for Chapter 1 and 2 that you have to look at this card. And I think it has the potential to do really broken things as a tutor for any creature. That is just so powerful. All right, the last card on my list, and one that actually flew under the radar for me until I thought about it. I think Standard is in such a good position not such a good position. I mean, such a powerful overall standard. It's such a high power level standard that without rotation. And we do not have a 2 mana rock that is just straight up, just add mana and has a good additional effect. And I think Iron Crag fits that role perfectly. Obviously, legendary artifacts, a little bit sketchy. You don't want to play too many, but if you look at the amount of cards we have that cost 4 that are good, you got like Wandering Emperor, you got Shield Red. Those are 2 that come off the top of my mind. You have Elspeth, the 4 mana Elspeth. I don't know. There's got to be other things. Maybe the 4 mana Red Dragon that ramps you even harder. Maybe you cast this and then you play 4 mana Battle that ramps you for 2. There's a lot of stuff to do, and usually ramping from 2 to 4 is so broken as long as Standard's a high enough power level where there are enough cards to take advantage of this. And this card is really, really fantastic. Whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may have it become a legendary equipment artifact named Everflame Hero's Legacy, so it changes names, If you do, it gains equip 3 and equipped creature gets +3/+3 and loses all abilities. So that's not the equipment itself, it doesn't seem like it's that relevant, but what you have to keep in mind is that this comes for free after the point where you figure I actually don't know. Yeah, it wouldn't tap for mana anymore, right? It transforms. Yeah, I think it's a different. It wouldn't add for mana. So once you don't need the mana anymore, you play your legendary creature maybe in the mid to late game, and then you're probably playing cards like Wedding Announcement. Maybe you're playing like a ramp deck. You're playing like the card that summons the Ox, the beasts or whatever, the 3/3 beasts, the domain card. And this is basically like a freebie extra stats. So it transforms into something relevant. That's usually what you want out of a mana rock. You want something that's relevant later when you don't need the mana anymore. So a card like Celestis is really good. But the key factor here is that this costs 2, and it's so powerful to have a 2 mana ramping you straight to 4. So that's all I want to say about this card. I think this has the potential to be a very good card in Standard. Anyways, that's going to do it for me in my top 10 best Wilds of Eldraine cards. I'm sure there are a lot of cards that I haven't mentioned. There are definitely some that I would have put in the honorable mentions, but I'm just going to leave this as my top 10. There are a lot more green cards that I think are worth looking at as well. And I think the overall set looks to be pretty exciting, and there are definitely a lot of cards that I feel like you can try to build around and get some very crazy deck archetypes out of. So I'm definitely looking forward to the set, and I hope you are too. Anyways, I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoy my content and would like to help me keep making it, consider supporting me over on Patreon, where you can access to a bunch of bonus videos, as well as other rewards depending on the tiers. And thank you so much to all the lovely patrons that are already subscribed. I appreciate it very much. And I will see you all in the next video.